So, over the years, I've gotten the sense that there's this notion that circulates among the general guitar playing community that is accepted as truth. And that notion is that pain is just a part of playing guitar. That because playing guitar, or any instrument really well, requires years and years of practice, you need to endure lots of physical pain before you see improvement. It's this sports mentality that to improve, you need to overcome these hurdles. And I think this idea gets culturally perpetuated by lyrics like this, played it till my fingers bled, or scenes like this.
Keep playing! Keep playing! Keep playing! Don't stop!
Play through the pain. Blood, sweat, and tears. Don't stop. Keep going. Phrases that should be taken figuratively. I've talked to many guitarists who have been playing for several years who say that their hands get sore and tired after playing for an hour. They may sometimes experience sharp pains in their hands and wrists, but what you should know is that pain is not normal when playing guitar, specifically joint and muscle pain. Of course, when you first start learning the guitar, you go through a month or two of building up calluses on your fingertips. Your fingertips will sting, you might get small blisters, dead skin will peel away. That's epidermal pain. That's all normal. It's gonna happen. And your fingers and hands might sometimes feel tired after practicing for a long period of time, especially if you're working on some new technique or thing you haven't totally gotten the hang of yet. But joint and muscle pain should not be happening. Will you experience some amount of joint or muscle pain in your journey? Almost certainly. But is it normal? No. Pain means you're doing something wrong. And you need to change something about what you're doing. A guy goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." And the doctor says, "Well, don't do that." If you regularly, keyword, regularly, experience pain as a result of practicing or playing your instrument, then something needs to change about what you're doing. Now, maybe you have arthritis, or carpal tunnel syndrome, or some other chronic condition that is not a direct result of playing guitar. And if you're set on continuing to play guitar, despite having a condition like that, then pain management is obviously all the more important. So in this video, I'm going to go through 3 things that you can check about your own playing to avoid pain and minimize the risk of repetitive strain injuries. These are all general things that apply to any style of guitar playing. Now, not to undermine my own authority on the subject, but I'm not an occupational therapist, but I do have a master's degree in music performance with a concentration in guitar, so I've studied proper technique extensively. I've seen my peers battle playing injuries, and I have narrowly escaped them myself. That's enough intro. Let's get into it. Limiting practice time. When I was still in school, I would practice 3 to 4 hours on a good day. That was always my target. Some days you just have too many obligations and you can't squeeze it in. That's life. But I would try not to practice 3 to 4 hours in one sitting. That's not a good idea. I would do 1.5 hours to 2 hours in the morning and again later in the afternoon. You want to break up your practice time throughout the day so that you give your hands and your brain time to rest. Even in one sitting, you should get up and move around every 45 minutes or so. Go to the bathroom, check the mail, walk the dog, get a drink of water. It just gives you a few minutes to mentally, physically reset and compose yourself again. If you don't break up your practice across the day and regularly play continuously for hours and hours, you need to be extra careful. One day, when I was getting ready for my junior recital, I sat down and played my entire program start to finish 3 times in a row with no break. And I had about 45 minutes of music for that recital. And it was all hard stuff. When I was done, my hands and wrists were really tired. The next day, I had my lesson, and I was experiencing a lot of sharp pains in my wrists. I told my teacher, and he said, "I don't think you should play anything for me today." Instead, we talked about stretching and budgeting practice time. Fortunately, after a couple days, I healed up and the pain went away. But after that, I became very wary of practicing too much in one sitting. That was a lesson learned the hard way. One of the other guitar students in the program actually did suffer a bad playing injury that seriously inhibited his progress. I think he was a performance major, so he had all his solo repertoire he was working on, plus all of his guitar ensemble music, and he played in 1 or 2 jazz bands in addition to that. He was playing a lot of guitar like all day, every day. And then it caught up to him and he totally blew out his wrist. I can't remember if he had tendonitis or what, but he had to wear a brace constantly, and his playing took a huge step backwards. He had to drastically cut back on how much he was playing in a day, and be very delicate and focused whenever he did practice. Whenever I watched him perform, he was visibly struggling to keep his technique under control and avoid doing anything too strenuous. Now, what if you're somebody who makes a living playing cover gigs? Like here in Nashville, the typical Broadway bar gig is a 4-hour slot. That's a long time to be playing. If you do that all the time and your general playing technique isn't up to snuff, you would be extremely lucky not to hurt yourself over time. So the next two things you can check about your playing are technique related. Straight wrists. This is a big one. I see a lot of people who play like this. This is mainly a left hand thing, but it goes for both hands. There's a lot of fine motor control going on in both hands to execute a wide variety of chord shapes and melodic lines. So there needs to be a high degree of independence among your fingers. Finger independence is huge. There's loads of exercises you can practice to develop this. But no matter how developed your finger independence is, it doesn't skirt the need for a straight wrist. Our wrists are really delicate and prone to injury. They're not really meant to move in extreme ways. None of our joints are, really. If you do something like this and watch your arm, you can see the action originates all the way back up your forearm near your elbow. A little more close up. If I make a tight fist, you can see these muscles through here play a big part, and these big tendons jump right out. If you're always playing with your wrist extended or contracted, you're choking those tendons and putting friction on them. It's like kinking a garden hose. Your wrist should be straight or just barely contracted by default. You should never feel any pinching or rubbing in your wrist. If you ever need to go beyond this little safe range, it should be brief, and it should not be something you practice repeatedly for too long. The same goes for the right hand. If you play mainly fingerstyle, like I do, everything I said about the left hand still applies. If you usually play with a pick, then there's still this safe range of motion up or down. If you're resting the side of your palm on the bridge, for instance, you might have a slight extension happening. But the thing to avoid is too much of this side-to-side motion. You want to involve more rotation of the forearm, like turning a key. In an alternate picking situation, it's a combination of this slight up and down motion with the forearm rotation. Very little of the work is being done by the wrist itself. Basically, if you think about what you do with your wrists when you're curling dumbbells, that's the positioning you want when you're playing guitar. When your wrists are straight, they are at their strongest. Squeezing the neck. I made a video sometime last year specifically about not squeezing the neck, and I would encourage you to watch it. But basically, contrary to what many guitarists seem to believe, you're not supposed to apply any squeezing or clamping pressure on the neck when you're pressing strings down. Your thumb hangs out on the back of the neck, but it should never be pressing firmly into the wood. It introduces a lot of unneeded tension in your hand, and physical tension has this horrible tendency to spread across our bodies like wildfire. Tension is the enemy of unhindered mobility. If you can prevent yourself from burying your thumb in the back of the neck, your fingers will be able to move more freely, and you won't end up with a big cramp in here after playing for a short period of time. The tendency to squeeze the neck makes intuitive sense, but you have to realize that you need hardly any pressure at all to hold down the strings. There's an easy way to demonstrate this that I got from one of my former teachers. You can grab a guitar and try this with me. Pick a fret somewhere on the D string, preferably one where there's no natural harmonic. The 8th fret is fine. Position a finger at the 8th fret, doesn't matter which finger, and just touch the string where you would press down, right behind the fret, but don't actually press down at all, just make contact. Pluck the string a few times. You should hear a pretty dry thud. Now pluck the string repeatedly as you start to gradually press down. Once you hear the note buzzing, hold it there. How hard are you pressing? It should be hardly any pressure at all. Take note of it. Physically, how does it feel in your hand, in your arm, and the rest of your body to be applying that tiny amount of pressure? You might notice it takes a fair bit of focus to keep it buzzing. Now apply more pressure until you hear the note ringing clearly. Once the note is clear, don't press any harder. How hard are you pressing now? Again, it should be hardly at all. That's all you need. Any more pressure than that is a waste of energy. There's no two ways about it. If you're squeezing too hard, not only are you wasting energy, you're also running the risk of bending notes sharp and playing out of tune in the process. So if you don't push into the back of the neck with your thumb, how do you get the force needed to make the notes ring clearly? First, you want to make sure the neck isn't pointed straight off to your left. Instead, it should be angled slightly forward, like 35 to 45 degrees forward. Far enough forward that when you bring your hand up to the neck, your upper arm is raised forward. How far forward it is depends on how high you raise the neck, but in any case, having your upper arm raised forward like this allows you to use the weight of your arm to draw your fingers into the strings. Yes, this will cause you to gently pull the whole neck back towards you, but your other forearm, resting on the lower bout, should counteract it. If you can get this sorted out, assuming you don't do this already, it will transform your playing for the better. Okay, let's tie this all together. You can think of everything I just went through as the general default settings. Everyone's bodies are different. We all have different advantages or limitations beyond our control, but there's a lot within our control. And taking steps to develop our playing technique to the point of maximum efficiency, where we have fine control of everything we're doing, and we're not running the risk of injuring ourselves, all while still making the music we want to be making, is so worth prioritizing. I remember something my last teacher, Stanley Yates, once said. There is nothing natural about playing the guitar. If there was, we wouldn't ever need to practice. Stanley is, by all definitions, a virtuoso guitarist. I remember watching him give recitals and just being utterly blown away by the level of control and relaxation he displays in his technique, all while being transcendently musical. He used to say to us, when he's done playing a 90-minute recital, he could just go out and do it again. His technique is so polished and efficient that nothing gets in his way. If you watch the hands of any incredible guitarist while they're playing, like Larry Carlton, Pat Metheny, Robin Ford, Mark Lettieri, a big favorite of mine, they look like they're not doing anything. Like everything is effortless. And if you watch them carefully, they are doing everything I talked about in this video. If they ever deviate, it's just for a brief thing here or there if the music demands it. Oh, and one final thing to avoid injuries. Play a guitar that's set up well. If your action is so high you can fit a deck of cards under it, you gotta get that sorted out. Your instrument should work for you, not against you. So make sure it's set up properly. If you ever feel pain when playing guitar, it's not the end of the world. You just shouldn't allow that to become your normal. Take steps to change whatever is causing that pain and break whatever habits you need to break so that you can continue to play guitar later into life. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you gained something from all that. If you're interested in one-on-one Zoom lessons, I have a few openings available. Feel free to message me directly if you want to know more. I also have some original exercise books available in my store. Making a purchase is a great way to support the creation of future videos and other projects. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next one.